Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Have you ever wondered about uh, godly leadership in the home, or just even just just doing the right things in life? Today, I have a very special guest, and his name is Mr. Mark Collins. He's a coach, and he talks about this, and he has a whole system. And I was looking through it, and I just thought, you know what? I'd love my community to hear about him. How you doing, Mr. Collins?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm good. Can you do me a favor and just kind of introduce yourself to my audience?
Yeah, absolutely. The short version is I'm a husband, father, pastor, and coach. My passion is to see Christian men unleashed into the life that they're created for, and it comes from kind of my past of being a guy who felt like I had more of a life and more of a design than what I was living out. I wanted to be better than the things I was living and some of the things I was saying. And so in my own journey in Christianity and figuring out how to use the Bible as instruction, I was able to kind of see that guy show up in my life, in my relationship with my wife, and my job, and in a business I started. And like anybody who finds something that they think is amazing, you want to share it with everybody around you. And so that's kind of started my journey and trying to bring men along and give them the tools to be able to do it in their own life.
So one of the things that I always say at church, when I do the coffee, and I greet everybody
Nice.
that come in, and I do it because I love to pray for people at night, and that's kind of, I get my little prayer list out of that, and I get to talk to people. And one of the things that I talk to like young married folks is how marriage is under attack. A marriage
Mm,
is marriage is under attack, and more so, women are under attack too, but men in the home, men as leaders in the home, in society, in marriage, they are under
yeah.
attack. That's something I understand personally as a man. So I wanted to bring somebody on to kind of talk about the things that we encounter as men in that when we fail in leadership. So what have you like what made you embark in this journey? What did you see men failing in? Was it your personal kind of failing, or something that you saw and you God put it on your heart to address?
That's a great question. I tell everybody that the course I have is called Life Mastery, and I actually wrote a book as well, Life Mastery: Living Life by Design. I tell people I didn't create this course because I thought it was a really cool tool or something that other guys needed. I lived it out in my own life, and again trying to figure out how to become a man that I believed I could be, but I wasn't seeing in my life a guy who was not shrinking back, who didn't have to deal with anxiety and worry and issues, who had a great relationship and was invested in it, not trying to find a way to have my wife make up for the lack or the insecurity I had on the inside of me. So the long and the short of it was I needed it for myself. And in my journey in figuring it out, I figured I wasn't probably the only guy out there who was dealing with it. And I've been sharing with it with other guys ever since.
How is it that we what is wh- like I know that with these things they start small and they get bigger. So how do you see as the pattern that men fail in leadership, in Christian leadership, in lovingly leading their home?
Yeah, and I don't, I understand definitely the direction, and your question is very good, but I don't. This is the thing I want to make guys aware of is that you're not failing. You're, you're just doing the best you can with the tools that you have. And the reason I say that is one of the biggest issues in men's life is this fear of failure, right? We don't want to be disappointed. We don't want to disappoint others. We don't want to feel like we've let somebody down. It's believing that you want to succeed in your life, whether it's in your marriage or in your business or what have you, um, and not being equipped to be able to do it. So really, it isn't a failure. It's men living out of who they believe they are, not who they were created to be. The basis, the foundation of my course is really, it starts with one thing, and it's identity. Who were you created to be? The more you understand who you're created to be, the more you see that guy lived out in your marriage, as a husband, as a father, as a worker, as a friend. The less you know who you are, the more you'll come and make your world make up for it. And so I tell people this all the time, like with my relationship with my wife. If I don't know who I'm created to be, if I don't have a solid understanding of the identity, who God made me to be, then she's going to have to make up the difference. And so that's one of the things that men need to understand or realize is walking into the truth of who you are versus what your life has said, what your past has said, what your failures have said, and what people have said about you.
I understand how words matter, and I'm sorry for using that word failure. It's kind of those it's just the words that we use in the
Not a
world,
problem.
and they could have an effect on you. But it how do you find out? Because I spent a lot of time, money, a lot of headaches trying to find my purpose. And I don't know if that's the same thing as finding, where for me it was finding God's purpose in my life. And
Yeah.
that took a lot of headaches. What do you mean by finding that when you were saying that for a man finding that? And is it the same for every man or is it different?
That is a really good question. And by the way, you're right. Words do matter, and not the words that you said, but the words that we've been told, right? So at the end of the day, who I am today is if I don't know who I'm created to be, if I don't understand my identity, then who I'm going to be is the person that my past, my pains, my experiences, and those words that were said to me. And so that's kind of the battle, actually. So I love that you said that. What it comes down to is understanding that if I'm not my past, then I am who God said that I am. So it's unpacking identity and understanding who you're created to be apart from your activities. You have a business and a role, and obviously you're successful in your podcasting, and we can sometimes think that that's who we are. But at the end of the day, we're not our activities, we're not our accomplishments, we're not our income, right? We're not our titles, we're not those things that we've done. We're actually something apart from that. I tell guys all the time, I say this: your character is your calling. Who you are is the answer to the situation you're walking into. It's not a skill set, it's not a title, it's not a role. And in that place, you're not looking for those things to make up the difference. So if I'm feeling like I'm somebody who's a failure, I'm not trying to succeed at business to prove myself wrong. I'm literally walking in as the person who I was created to be, living it out. So there's the difference between your identity and your position.
I love that. That here's the thing. From what I've seen, provider took a big role in my head when it came to marriage, and
Yeah.
an outsized role. As a matter of fact, it became almost the only role that I was good at, unfortunately, in my marriage. And it is detrimental. It is what a lot of men do. We feel like, we're providing, we're doing what we were
Yeah.
supposed to do. And I know that a lot of men deal with that. I know a lot of men come up with, that's my purpose. I provide. That's what I do. How is that a stumbling block on getting to where you're leading your home and where you're talking about we should be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just for you, I would specifically say I would want to honor that. Right. There is an importance to the role of men. And one of those major pillars of our lives is to be a provider, right? To be a stability in the household, to be a strength with our spouses, with our children, with our community, right? There's things that matter about us. And so I'm not saying that those roles don't matter, but the challenge is this. Like, I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I've been in a place where I was working and we were making income and I lost a job. And all of a sudden, you lose a job. Okay, I'll get one. Okay, well, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, right? Time goes by, and all of a sudden, it's becoming more of an identity crisis. You're like, I'm not carrying my weight. I'm not doing the things I'm supposed to do. And so it's really separating yourself from your roles. Not that your roles aren't important, but they should never tell you who you are. Because when they tell you who you are, then they have a rule over you and who you're created to be. So what I'm trying to make men is bulletproof so that as you're walking into things, I understand already that I'm the answer to any situation I'm walking into. I don't have to have my circumstance be great for me to feel okay. And so
Yeah.
there's a separation of identity versus your role and your responsibility. And a lot of times, well, frankly, every time it comes down to this. If I don't understand who I am, then I'm going to allow my world to tell me who I am.
Hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, and that is true. I So for me, I always feel like, or I always think that I have come a long way in my journey,
Good.
I feel sometimes that the devil likes to remind me of my past, and he's very good at reminding me of who I was. and I feel like a lot of men go through that.
Yeah.
How do you counsel men that have gone through that? Maybe, one of the biggest things that hit marriage is infidelity, and how that works, and how do you get to mastery after something like that?
Wow, that's a big question. That's a really good question.
Okay.
I would say this. I mean, first and foremost, that first part of what you said, I think, well, I don't want to generalize, but I think we all struggle with it in this. In I see who I am today, right? The polished up version, the guy who's gone through some things, who's learned some things, who's been free of some things. And then I look back at the mistakes I've made, the issues, the challenges, right? And you're right about Satan, but it's also us ourselves in looking at our past and judging our past by our present. And so what I tell my guys is, hey, one of the revelations you need to have is that if you knew back then, right? If you had the wisdom back then, if you had the skills back then, you would have made different choices. But you weren't. So why hold your past against yourself in your present? That's not who you're called to be. If I can just really quickly give you a snapshot, a couple of the tools that we do in our course, a couple of the things I talk about in the book. I start guys off with three things, and it really is all about you, because I find that the more I know about me, the more I know my God. And I'll say it this way. The first thing I do is there's an identity exercise. I call it an I am statement. I have them write down an I am statement. Who are you? Apart from your title, your role, your successes, the things in your life, and even apart from your failures, because sometimes we use those as an identity. Apart from all of that, who are you? Who are you created to be? As a Christian like you and I are, my hope is that they start that conversation with God and saying, God, who did you make me to be? So I have them write down the statement, who are you apart from your things? And the first thing for that is it's a paradigm shift of saying, okay, I am not my stuff. So whether I succeed or fail, whether I have a great relationship or struggles with my wife, I'm still okay. I'm still a person of worth and value. And so that strips away that lie that Satan can tell you that, oh, see what you're doing. You're blowing it again. You're horrible. You're whatever. He has a great way of telling you the things that you don't want to hear. The second tool is this. A celebration list. I tell them, write down 10 things you're celebrating about you. Two reasons for that. The first is, I don't know about in your life, but in my life, I have a tendency to be able to see my faults and my issues faster than my successes and my attributes.
Absolutely.
And so in that place, what I try and do is condition the guys, hey, you're worth celebrating. If God is, and he is the creator of every human being, then he had intention and desire and passion and focus on every single part of who you are.
Amen.
And so what I tell them is, the more I celebrate what I love about me, the more I see God in me. Because there's nothing I can love or like or recognize in myself that wasn't first a thought and a creation of God. And so the more I know me, the bigger my God becomes. The third exercise I give them is an accomplishment list. Write down 10 things that you've accomplished in your life. And the reason for this one is the same. It's, I'm sure it's universal, but certainly with men, what I find is that we don't celebrate ourselves for the things we're doing along the way. Like you were talking about being a provider. Come to find out, every man is not. Every man isn't either equipped or have the fortitude to be a provider in their household, but you are. Every man doesn't go out and get a job. Every man doesn't pay his bills on time. Every man doesn't provide for his family and bring stability and foundation of strength within his home. And so I tell them, write down 10 things that you are accomplished at. Because like you'd said, in any case that we have where we're trying to succeed at something, certainly Satan will come alongside, but also our past will. Our past failures, you talked about infidelity, our past failures will say, well, you blew it. You'll never have a happy marriage, or your business failed and you went bankrupt. You'll never be able to be financially stable, right? There's always a voice wanting to tell us who we're not. The more I can have tools and ammunition ahead of time so I know who I am, the more I can not just fight those battles, but really be victorious over those lies in my life.
And those words matter. Like you're saying, like, I'll never, that
Yeah.
I'll never will destroy you. That I'll never. And it is like the easiest thing it rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Especially when you're feeling battered. So in this day and age, where the culture says that male leadership is a bad thing. The culture says a lot of bad things about male leadership, and in some senses tries to emasculate. It's called a toxic masculinity. Where does this come in? Where does this differentiate? Where does this stand apart?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, like you and I already know, God is different,
Yeah.
and the truth is different, and so people can have all the philosophies, and I'm not here to debate them, and certainly you and I don't have the time to try and speak truth to people who only want to believe lies. But the truth of the matter is, you know how you destroy a household? You take a father out. You know how to destroy a marriage? You take a husband out. You know how to destroy a nation? You take the men out. And I'm not saying that there's not equal and great value in women. My wife is my life partner. We're partners. I have my role that I fulfill completely, but she has a role that's equally important. I'm a better man because she's in my life. And so I'm not discounting or devaluing her value, but there is I'm getting a little preachy. I
No, I
apologize.
love it. I love it. Please.
There is a unique calling on manhood and men in society, a stability and strength, a fortitude and the ability to really lead. And so what I'm trying to do is elevate men into all that they're called to be in all areas. So as much as I'm strong, I'm also a man willing to share emotions and vulnerability with my wife. I'm not a a robot or a warrior who's not able to engage in my wife in the ways that matter in our relationship. That happened through tragedy in my life. My dad was in the military, and I tell people he wasn't a drill instructor, but he would have been a great one.
Yeah.
He was that kind of guy. He was,
Mhm.
drill instructor mentality and don't show emotion. I mean, my dad never told me he loved me until I told him first in my 20s. He never told me he was proud of me. The first time I heard he was proud of me and the things I was doing, I heard it from somebody else because he had never told me until I was in my 40s. I mean, so he was that kind of guy. And so the analogy I give is in life mastery, we want to be a whole man. And so the strength that you have and all those abilities without emotional stability and without being emotionally functional in your household, it's like that old cartoon of the bodybuilder who had a huge upper body and twig and toothpick legs. That's a man who can't be emotionally engaged in his marriage, in his life, in his relationship. There's equal parts of that where a man of strength can also be a man of vulnerability that gives his children permission to do that and brings safety into his household because he's somebody that they feel safe with and they can trust. You don't always feel safe with a warrior, but you do feel safe with the father. And so what we're trying to do is bring the truth of manhood against those guys that say women are nothing, they're property. I mean, there's movements and ideas out there. And then there's the other movement that says men don't matter, they're toxic masculinity and all this stuff. There's no toxicity in respect and loyalty and love and courage.
Yeah.
Not that every man has been perfect in all circumstances, but men matter and men will always matter because that's what God created as a relationship between a man and woman.
He did. And the thing is that, and I always, as I've heard sermons throughout my life, when God gives us the blueprint as men on how he wants us to, and how he wants us to treat women and how he wants us to conduct ourselves in marriage. And I mean, Jesus was pretty explicit in what he said. And I mean, and what a wife is supposed to mean to us. As a matter of fact, I'm not positive. I'm not a theologian, folks, but I'm pretty sure nowhere in the Bible does it say for your wife to love you, but it commands you to love your wife. I'm not 1,000% positive, but I remember something like that. And so how much do you incorporate that? Because you're a man of faith. How much do you incorporate those lessons of the Bible into your, at least even if it's just in the sense of it, into your mastery?
Yeah, it's foundational. It's everything. When I was trying to figure out how to become the man that I knew I could be, but I wasn't seeing, I tried personal development, and I'm not saying that personal development doesn't work. So Tony Robbins and Dale Carnegie, and I mean all the big names, right? I was desperate because I knew I was better than the insecurity and the fear I was living with and the anger I was using to compensate for it. So I was taking all those things in, but the problem with the personal development programs was the most of them at some level are imitate me because I'm awesome and successful. And if you do the same things I do, you'll be awesome and successful also. And there's principles that work there at a certain level, but at one level, it never worked for me because I knew I wasn't that person. The difference between my program and a lot of those is, first off, because it starts with identity. We're not giving you an imitation of somebody to measure up to. We're saying who you were created to be is not only enough, but it is perfectly capable for everything God has for your life. So it's saying, who are you created to be? Let's shoot that for that target. And then you're going to have a life that is beyond what you could even imagine. And then it's understanding who you're created to be so you can have the life you're created for. And so every principle we have in the course, all of the 14 lessons and the 3 transformational tools of mastering your thoughts, words, and actions, they're literally taken from the Bible, mastering your thoughts. Proverbs 23:7, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. The author telling a reader, hey, this person who's rich, he's acting one way with you, but on the inside, he's somebody totally different. But there's a truth and an instruction that God gives us in that says this: as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So the man I am today is a sum total of my thoughts and my words and actions, but we'll just take thoughts. So that means that guy that my name is Mark, that Mark that I felt like I could be, but I wasn't seeing. Well, what am I thinking about him? What am I thinking about my life? Am I thinking I'm going to be a failure? Am I thinking I can't do this thing? Am I thinking that I'm just, I'm not good because, like you'd said, infidelity or anger or bankruptcy or whatever the things are that get used against us? Or am I more than that? If I want to change my life, I'll change my thoughts. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he, which means this: who you think you are, you'll become. Every single lesson is based on a scripture and pulling the instructions out of it so that you can use it, because that's what God had them there for, so that we can use them to actually become who he created us to be.
Do you deal with in this addictions, male addictions at all?
Yeah. And not specifically in that, alcoholism or drug abuse or pornography or all of those. But what I tell the guys is this, and I am a pastor, so I just need to let you know, I tell them this, that your addiction, your issue is just your medication of choice. Not that looking at pornography is good for you. Obviously it's not. And there's all sorts of ways we could talk about it. But at the end of the day, whatever the thing is you're using, whether it's sex or power or drugs or money or prestige or title, I mean, all of these things in many cases are a medication against the life you don't like. It's not an addiction that you're going to be struggling with your whole life. The problem with that is that's not what God says. If we're created in his image and his likeness, and if all God makes is perfect, not that we don't sin, because Adam and Eve, I can go down that road, but we don't have time for it. But if all that God makes is perfect, does that mean that God doesn't make somebody addicted? I don't see anywhere in a scripture that he says, yes, but. Yeah. There's no yes, but people in the world. And so at the end of the day, we are who he says we are. And so addictions, I try and put them in proper context. Satan does 2 things. He binds you to your thing. He handcuffs you to your struggle, whether it's drugs, sex, whatever the thing is you're doing. And then he tells you that that's who you are and you'll never be able to overcome it. He lies to you on both sides. And I tell people the truth, which is it's just a symptom of a life you don't like. The reason why you're struggling with pornography is because you want to have some satisfaction in a moment of your life. The same thing with weed, the same thing with alcohol, the same thing with anything that you're struggling with. You're medicating yourself against the life you don't like. How do you change that? Recognizing the thing and doing your best to overcome it. But the best way to overcome it is to start creating the life that you do like, one that aligns with who God created you to be. And then all of a sudden, your temptations wane and they falter and they fall away because I don't need that thing anymore because that's not who I am.
Wow. It's not often I get my mind blown, but man, that was good. That was good. That the medication against the life you don't want. Wow. Wow, that was sorry, I hadn't heard it that way. I got to say I'm pretty impressed by that because it is powerful statement that you said, and it makes so much sense to what is happening. Now,
Hmm.
when you're dealing with these men, how do and you're going through these mastery and you're going through this the stuff that your program,
Yeah.
where does the wife and the family come in?
Um,
Are they incorporated in this, or this is the man going through a
that's great.
journey?
That's a great question. So there's no kind of group training or teaching. It's individualized. But the interesting thing is the more I understand me, the less my wife has to make up the difference. The more I understand who I'm created to be, the better husband I am, because now my wife doesn't have to make up for the fact that I don't feel like I'm measuring up, or I don't feel like I'm loved or I'm worthy of the things that I have in my life. The less I struggle with my emotional issues, the better dad I am, because I'm not demanding and controlling. I've been there, right? I'm not sure if you have, but I have.
Hmm.
Before, and while I'm walking through this journey, it's the control is you trying to overcome your feeling that something's going to fail and it's going to be your fault. And
Yeah.
so we try and control things to make sure the outcome measures up to what we want. So
Mm.
the more I know who I am, the more I'm confident that I am the answer to the circumstances I'm walking into, which every man is, the less I have to demand and control and manipulate and use anger to try and get my way and all those things that hurt relationships. They're not directly involved as a group, but they're absolutely the front line recipients of the benefits of us walking in what I call the life mastery journey.
So, Mark, in this life mastery journey that you've embarked on, and getting people into this and changing people's lives, marriages, men and their life, in their life trajectory, there's got to be a story that sticks with you about success. Now, I know you don't want to. It's not about giving yourself the glory on this. I know that this is God doing this, but I want you to talk about a success story that really sticks with you on this mastery journey that you've been on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mean for the men that I work with, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two guys that come to mind. One in a relationship sense, and one in a business sense. And I'll be very quick. I don't want to
That's
take
fine.
up all of your time. The business sense was a guy named Brett who was very successful, is very successful at business, and also a pastor. So we call it he's bivocational. So he's a pastor and a business person.
Right.
Very successful at business at a high degree with a lot of income. Before he started my program, before he was engaged in the Life Mastery course, I would have never known that he was not successful only, but he was a guy that dealt with a high level of fear of failure, right? And so even whether it's in a job or in a business, it's this sense that I'm going to fail. So anytime you're trying to be successful, you go for that promotion, or you're in a business and you're trying to make a deal, there's this voice in the back of your head saying you're going to blow it. It's going to be a financial disaster. It's not going to work out, right? All of these things that are trying to hold you back. Or in a job sense, you shouldn't go for that promotion. No, you shouldn't try for that job. That's for somebody else, right? It's these things that are holding us back, really our past telling us who our present is supposed to be,
Mhm.
lying to us. So for him, one of the biggest successes wasn't that he was now suddenly successful in his business, because he already was. The great success for him was that his success actually mattered. See, apart from understanding who you are, your business success is a substitute for your identity. The problem with it is it's a short term success story, because when he got that business success in his life, all it was him really trying to prove that he was okay, that he was worthy, that he was a man of value. Well, the minute the success happened, he couldn't enjoy it anyway, because he needed that next one and the next one. It's not I don't want to equate it to an addiction, but when your work and your business and your outward success has to tell you who you are, it always lasts for a second. And then the joy is all gone, and you have to prove it again and again, because that voice in your head says, well, you were lucky that time, but not this next time. This next time, you're really going to blow it. You should just back off and not do that. And we do that in our lives. And he
Yes.
was doing that in certain ways in his. but with the life mastery and the ability to understand, no, I am created and I have value and worth, and I have skills and talents and abilities that I can live out in these areas. So the work wasn't having to prove to him who he was. He was really just allowing himself to be unleashed because he knew who he was. It transformed his life. It transformed his relationship with his wife. Because, when you have job or business stress, you don't just leave it at work. You'd like to, but you're coming home grumpy. You're getting into an argument. You're unhappy with everybody. I don't know if I'm the only one. But so with him, it was business success that actually became success instead of trying to prove he mattered. And it splashed over into his relationship. The other one is a guy named Vance, and he was in business working for the government, and he had a really solid high role. And I met him one time. I was praying with him in the hospital, and that built a relationship that brought him into the Life Mastery course. And his was the other side. He was, I don't want to say he was exactly like my dad, but he was that kind of quiet, stoic guy in his household, right? He was the provider in the house, but he really wasn't engaged. His wife would want to kind of pull out emotions and ideas and understanding of where he's at, and he just had those, robotic kind of intellectual answers. His kids could, he wasn't that soft and he wasn't that wrestling and carousing and laughing kind of dad. He was that dad that was there. And then in Life Mastery, his part in the story was he got to really kind of believe who he was created to be. He was being able to drop the walls and the guards that he had up around his heart that said, hey, I'm just going to keep people at a distance. I've been hurt in the past. My wife, I've been with her a long time, but, old habits die hard. And for him, it was just being able to be emotionally vacant so that he protected himself against disappointment or hurt or loss. And so as he was able to kind of open up himself to understanding that he was okay no matter what his circumstance, he was able to actually engage with his family emotionally and relationally in ways that mattered to them so that they felt like he was all there, not just there to provide something for them.
Wow. And I love that. I love that they got to a better place. They got to that purpose that I like that. I'm so glad that I'm very happy that you were able to come on the show and talk about this subject, because it is affecting a lot of men in their lives, in their marriages, and it's not something that us men like to talk about. We're like, we got this as a famous line, and we don't. We could use some help sometimes, and this is where that comes in. But I wanted to share, for those of you guys that are going to watch this, I wanted to share his website, and that's Freedom for Life. And it's on the screen right now. And you can see the introduction to freedom and all the courses, Life Mastery, and then the bonus teachings. And, you could click on that and it'll take you into it. You could sign up and it'll take you curriculum. And I mean, it has more and more details and get you more information on Mark's program. Mark, thank you so much again for coming on my show. I always give the guests the last word. So go ahead and tell the audience whatever it is you want to tell them.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Two things. One thing is on that main page of the website, there's what's called a diagnostic tool. That's a free tool. It's really a bit of a survey, 40 questions, quickly answered, and it'll let you know where you're at in your life mastery journey. Kind of let you know where you stand, but also give you next steps to be able to, move forward in your life mastery journey, whether it's business success or in your job. Really, it's you being unleashed. And that's my goal in life, is that men are unleashed as the hero that they were created to be. Sometimes we're a hero in hiding, maybe not in our job and in our relationship, maybe not in our relationship, but in our family. There's areas where we aren't really kind of maxing out our life or having that life mastery life. But here's the truth of the matter. You're meant to have life mastery over your life in every area of your life. And that means living at the highest level, the level that God has for you. So whether you take my course, do the things that I have designed for you to do, or whatever it is that you do, don't give up on that understanding that there's more for your life and you're worth it. You're a man of value and worth, and you're going to have an impact and a difference in the world simply because you're here.
Wow. Well, thanks again for coming on. Can you stick around after show real quick?
Absolutely.
Thank you.